Good evening. You're watching a special edition of Context. I'm Okan Amashov here. Following the joint US-Israeli attack on Iran in the morning of the 28th of February, which ignited a massive retaliatory response from Tehran and resulted in the killing of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and many key commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the situation in the wider Middle East has reached a new and highly consequential stage. Unlike the 12-day war of last summer, the scope, intensity and main character of the current confrontation appear to be evolving in different ways. Iran's retaliatory measures have not been confined to US and Israeli assets in the Gulf region. Missiles have been fired in the direction of British sovereign base areas in Cyprus, where defensive systems have engaged incoming threats. Explosions and casualties have been reported across a wider range of Gulf states, including the United Arab Emirates, where 3 civilian fatalities have been reported, and Kuwait, with at least 1 reported fatality. Deadly Iranian missile attacks were reported in Israel's Beit Shemesh area as well. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has earlier stated that strikes against Iranian targets will only intensify in the coming days. US casualties, including the confirmed loss of 3 service members during operations linked to the Iran theater, raise the strategic stakes for President Donald Trump. Earlier in his public communications, the president appealed directly to the people of Iran, urging internal challenge to the government in Tehran. Domestically in Iran, an interim constitutional arrangement has been activated under Article 111 of the Iranian constitution. With Ayatollah Khamenei no longer in office for very obvious reasons, an interim leadership council has been formed comprising the president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, the chief of justice, and a clerical member of the Guardian Council, Ayatollah Arafi. This phase of the wider confrontation, in its casualties, its geographical spread, and its intensity, appears distinct from earlier escalations. There are also some reports that an Iranian warship was sunk by US forces. It's widely expected that this confrontation will continue, with Tehran absolutely bound to respond with further force, and US and Israeli decision makers publicly stating that any Iranian retaliation will be met with an unprecedented level of response. This dramatic escalation is not only a matter for the Middle East, of course. It's a source of a massive concern for neighboring regions, including the South Caucasus. Azerbaijan, for example, has taken steps to assist civilians at the Astara border crossing. To discuss this evolving and absolutely massively consequential subject, joining me now are Lieutenant General Marco Serronha from Lisbon, Portugal, Fuad Karimli, political analyst joining from Baku, Azerbaijan, and Elton Charnov, geopolitical and security expert, joining us from Tel Aviv, and Mr. Shervan Fashandi, board member of Iranian Americans for Liberty, joining us from Washington, D.C., U.S. capital. Welcome to all of you, gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you.
Lieutenant General, my first question is going to be addressed to you. In the face of the reported US casualties, how challenging in this operation for the United States and US allies in the region, for Israel, in terms of making sure the casualties and their implications following those casualties do not outweigh the attainment there?
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me today, and a compliment to all the members of the board that are with us today. Let's see, President Trump, in his initial address last morning, in the first hours of the operation, addressed the issue of the possible casualties in this operation. So it's something that happens in war, as he said. And so I suppose that the numbers, the figures for the time being is not quite an issue for the U.S. administration in this operation. Of course, Donald Trump has another issue or another problem with this kind of operations. That is the extent of the operation, of timing of days or weeks. We know that Donald Trump is very keen for extended operations, and even his support, his MAGA support in the US is the same. I'm not keen for huge operations. Nevertheless, I suppose that everybody in the United States realized somehow that this is something important for the future of the Middle East. So of course, we can discuss here if the United States broke the diplomatic process or not. Diplomacy is something that is not always clear for the outside view. So the people that are in the linked to the negotiations for the U.S. side said Iran was not keen to address the issues that the United States put in the table. So it's nevertheless the situation escalate for I suppose that we can start to call it a war. It's not only an operation like you said, like what happened in last June in the 12 days war or the 12 days operation. So it's something that even the objectives, the political objectives and the strategic objectives are more expanded than were in last year. So for that reason, we could expect not only the means that are in the scene, the operational means are huge, as we know. Even the political and the strategic objectives for the operation are expanded from the past. So now I suppose that Donald Trump said it, and Netanyahu also, that the possibility of a regime change it's in the table. So it's not just to decapitate the system, to break the command and control process, not only the political one, but also the operational one in the Revolutionary Guard, Iranian Guard, the destruction of the nuclear system, not only the infrastructure, probably the people that are linked to that also. The ballistic missiles technology in production, it's something that is a target also. And let's see what happened to the regime, if the regime could or not collapse in the next weeks ahead. But
I suppose Lieutenant General, nobody takes for granted that the government there will collapse, but it has been badly damaged. It's very obvious, and decapitation has happened already by virtue of the killing of Iran's supreme leader.
To the population, of course. But, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Charnov, we know that Iran is bound to retaliate. They have vowed to retaliate. And what is very interesting about the nature of their retaliation at this juncture, they're not merely targeting US assets in the Gulf region, but they're also targeting neighborhoods, civilian residential areas. And what happened in United Arab Emirates is a very interesting example. I mean, that particular residential, a very famous district of Dubai. And we see some other signs. Also Tel Aviv, of course, main target because it's one of the major commercial center of Israel. What do you expect what is the feeling there on the ground? I know that people in Tel Aviv in different parts of Israel have learned to live with this reality, but do they feel that this time it's a bit different, bearing in mind the killing of the supreme leader is bound to cause something different to what happened earlier?
So I think that before we talk about impressions on the ground, I think we need to talk about Iran's behavior, right? As my co-guest mentioned, that this was a decapitation strike, no doubt. Iran, unlike Hezbollah and other paramilitary groups, is a very entrenched government that has tremendous infrastructure in place to continue governance uninterrupted. What they've chosen to do is sort of, the way I would put it, is a doomsday plan. When everyone is killed, this is what we're all going to do. And they're just going to wreak havoc in the region wherever they can. They're targeting the Gulf because it's closer, it's more proximal, it's easier and faster to reach. And they're targeting Israel, of course, to punish Israel for carrying out the decapitation strike. I believe for the most part, spirits are determined across the region. In Israel, where populations are very used to these types of incidents, there's a lot of discipline in place. Daily life, although in limited fashion, continues. Children are learning remotely, and people have the luxury of bomb shelters in many of their homes. The reality is, in many of the Gulf countries as well, the countries are doing a very, very good job managing the crisis, communicating with their populations. And when you look at social media of residents in places like the UAE, you see a lot of positivity, a lot of resilience, a lot of I'm not going anywhere, and a lot of people cracking jokes as life goes on.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Fashandi, I don't know how long you have been outside Iran, but imagine you've been outside the country for some time, bearing in mind your political affiliations and aspirations. I mean, what do you make of this interim council, which has just been established there, comprising three characters: Iranian president, the Chief of Justice, and also one of the members of the Guardian Council. Do you think that particular body will be able to govern Iran for the time being, or you think that something far more dramatic is about to happen and may happen sooner than we may think? What is your evaluation of the situation there?
Hi, I have been outside Iran, lived outside Iran for about 25 years, but I've been following the news there almost on a daily basis, and because of my activism, I monitor it closely. So this interim council, or whatever it's called, I'm not sure if it can last long. The reason is each and every member of that council has a target on their back. We don't know how many days they'll live, let alone rule. And we saw that in the aftermath of the strike on Hassan Nasrallah, Nasrallah's life, the head of Hezbollah in Lebanon. What happened was, in the course of less than a week, 2 or 3 other leaders, successors to Nasrallah, were basically eliminated. None of them lasted more than a few days. And eventually, the current successor, the current leader, basically lives at the mercy of Israelis, with the unwritten agreement or condition that he doesn't order anything radical against or seriously endangering Israel's safety. So that's how he manages to live. So this operation maybe started as a decapitation operation with limited goals. Maybe regime change was in the picture for Israel and the US from the beginning. Maybe it wasn't. I don't have any inside information. But my prediction is that the course of events, one thing will lead to another, and the world, Israel, US, the Middle Eastern countries, even some of the former allies of the of the Islamic Republic, they will be left with no choice but to remove this evil regime from the power, because it's causing trouble all over the world. It's almost closing or half closed. They have closed the Strait of Hormuz, where a large portion of oil transportation worldwide goes through. And it's basically jeopardizing safety of maritime commerce, regional stability and security, as well as global stability and security. So the world is basically getting a taste of what the people of Iran have been experiencing for the past 47 years, that this regime is unbearable and it must go.
Mr. Fashandi, I've never been to Iran during my lifetime, and you have not been back in Iran for the past 25 years. You left the country. It's very difficult to understand what the public mood there is. You hear some people, they seem to be very supportive of the current system there, and you speak to some of the people in diaspora, they say complete opposite of what some of the people that you spoke earlier were saying. What percentage of the population you think currently is fully supportive of the change? By change, I mean the regime change, the change of the current system there.
Yeah, good question. We don't have exact numbers because there's no freedom to do polling, and there's no freedom of expression and association in Iran. But my estimate, which you can call it an educated estimate, is about 10% of the population are firm supporters of the regime. They are mourning the deceased supreme leader. They still kind of believe somehow in preserving this regime, maybe 5 to 10%, something like that. Let's call it 10%. Another 80 to 90% increasingly are looking to a future for Iran after the collapse of the Islamic Republic. And by far the most popular figure in the opposition, the most popular candidate for leading Iran in the future, at least in the interim terms, is the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, the son of the late Shah, who is widely beloved in Iran still among different layers of the society, different layers of the society, like the youth, the elderly, even some traditional religious sections of the society. They still look up to the Shah's son as either the future monarch or at the very least a figure who can unite the country, preserve its territorial integrity, and basically lay the ground for transition to a future democratic government where people choose their own fate.
Thank you, Mr. Fashan. We'll come back to the very complex ethnic composition of Iran a bit later. I will have one question about that. Fuad, thank you very much indeed for waiting very patiently over the past few minutes. What is your evaluation of the situation? It's a very sensitive moment for Azerbaijan, as we understand. Azerbaijan has got a very important sort of humanitarian role to play by virtue of neighboring Iran. Astara crossing border is very important. Azerbaijan has consistently made very clear that Azerbaijani territory will not be used against any country, including Iran. Simultaneously, Azerbaijan has got very vital and valuable strategic partnership with Israel and growing strategic relations with the United States, but those relations have nothing to do with the Iran situation. Azerbaijan's position has been very clear. How sensitive is this moment for this region and for Azerbaijan, and how careful do you think the government in this country is navigating this intricately complex situation?
Yes, thank you for having me. That's a very interesting question. I think in terms of sensitivity, it's really a highly sensitive point for Azerbaijan in perspective of what's happening. So these escalations are historic. Nothing like this has happened in the past. As my co-guests have mentioned, the 12-day war was a significant event last year, but the death of the supreme leader of Iran is, I think, a very symbolic event for Iran. So it's really hard to say what's going to happen, how long this conflict is going to last. Is it going to expand into a full-blown war? In terms of being a neighbor which shares a significant land border with Iran, I think looking at other cases in the past like Iraq, Syria, the risk of migration is really high, right? So if there is really internal strife, the ethnic composition, as you said, is really diverse. We've seen Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu call for the ethnic minorities to rise up and change the government. If that happens, civilians will be caught in the crossfire. They're already being caught, actually. So that could trigger a mass exodus, a migration, and this could really affect Azerbaijan in terms of, hosting. In north of Iran, there's a significant Azerbaijani population, Turkic-speaking population. So logically, where they would go is try to cross the border. So I think in terms of sensitivity, it's really high for Azerbaijan, really trying to balance the situation right now. It's really important. I think waiting and seeing without trying to, getting involved too much is the best option right now. Because, as you said, Azerbaijan does have a strategic partnership with Israel. It does buy significant technological equipment, but also Iran is a neighbor, and, there's the deep history of connection between the two countries. So it's a really sensitive balance that needs to be kept.
Thank you, Fuad. Very grateful. Lieutenant General, we earlier talked about the widening scope of this conflict. During the 12-day war, as I mentioned, allow me to reiterate myself, naturally the US assets were targeted by Israel. But now actually they were aiming at, by Islamic Republic of Iran, and now they're targeting British overseas bases in Cyprus. We see a focus on residential areas. Impression given is that by virtue of that intense moment emanating from the killing of Supreme Leader, Islamic Republic need to be seen strong, and they need to do something out of the ordinary. But just targeting US military assets would not suffice. They need to be seen capable of harming their enemies. Is United States and its allies ready for that scenario? And how capable Iran is actually? We understand that there are massive problems. They are diminishing in many ways, but they're still capable of threatening and hurting. Is United States ready for that scenario when they will go beyond the borders, beyond the ordinary?
Yeah, I suppose. Let's see. The Iranian capabilities in terms of missile capabilities, it's I cannot say that it's huge, but it's something. And we know that even it's not just the normal ballistic missiles. They have some hypersonic missiles, and they are using it, and that some of those missiles that are penetrating the air defenses. It's something that we have seen in Israel and in other places in the Gulf area. So let's see. The danger for the United States bases in the Gulf, I suppose, is not something that the United States cannot cope with. That they have enough and strong air defense and ballistic missiles capability, so it's not an issue. But nevertheless, the situation that Iran is using their missiles and the drones to target some civilian capabilities in the Gulf area, it's something that could, and we have seen some declarations from the Emirates, that and other countries, of course, that we could see some other actors participating in the fight, so to speak. So let's see. In military terms, the Iranian Guard or Iranian armed forces have not enough capability to produce something huge that could lead Israel or United States to stop fighting or not pursuing their political and strategic objectives. That is not going to happen for sure. So the idea that we could have is that the Iranian is trying to expand the targets, trying to put pressure in other actors worldwide, to put pressure in the United States, in Israel, to stop the fighting, and in the Gulf states also to stop the fighting and try to go back to the negotiation table. And we are seeing this from several countries, especially from the Europeans, some of the Europeans, and that could be a pressure that Iran is using with this threat of expanding the theater of operations to other countries, including to Cyprus, as we have seen, and possibly to other places, trying to put pressure in other countries, the Europeans and Russia and China, to put pressure in the United States and Israel to stop the fighting before the United States and Israel could achieve all their objectives, the military and strategic objectives. That's something that we could interpret from the position of Iran targeting other countries other than the United States and Israel, of course.
Thank you, Lieutenant General. Mr. Charnov, talking about this pressure that US and Israel may feel, and that pressure coming from key global actors. I don't know whether you watched that UN Security Council meeting yesterday, or just actually technically today, I suppose. It doesn't seem to be very consequential in terms of being able to exert pressure on Iran and Israel. What are the bare minimum US-Israeli objectives in the context of this particular operation? I would like you, whilst responding to this general inquiry of mine, also reflect on the pressure that may come from the Gulf countries, which are actually suffering as a result of this operation. We know that 3 persons have been announced killed in the United Arab Emirates. They're facing something unprecedented by their own standards as well. By the way, also we have recently received a report that 9 people have been killed as a result of Iranian attack in Israel, in that particular place that I mentioned earlier. So what are the bare minimum objectives for the purpose of this operation?
Sure. So I think that when you look at what Israel and the United States wants to achieve, we first need to look back at the timeline of Trump's second term vis-a-vis Iran. Netanyahu and Trump have proven to be in total concert when it comes to Iran. And even when it looks like they're butting heads, in reality, that was likely subterfuge in order to allow Iran to feel more comfortable before the 12-day war took place and caught the Iranians, to a certain extent, off guard. We saw similar subterfuge in the build-up to this operation, whereas on the one hand, the U.S. was telling diplomats to leave the region. On the other hand, Rubio was meant to visit on Monday. Yeah. So you see this sort of very intentional subterfuge. So I think we need to assume that Netanyahu and Trump are operating on a pretty similar wavelength. And while there might be different thresholds of objectives that each might be happy with, I think we can break it into a minimum and maximum. Minimum is severe depletion of Iranian military capabilities far beyond the damage done during the 12-day war in the summer. And Trump, in his initial statement, to destroy the Iranian Navy, to destroy their missiles and nuclear program, but also to destroy their capacity to remanufacture. So I believe that that is the minimum goal. The maximum goal is what Netanyahu and Trump also said in their statements during the first day of the war, which is to lay the groundwork for the Iranian people to overthrow their government once the battle is over. And you see that in some of the targets being struck. Today, Israel, seemingly Israel at least, struck besieged compounds in Tehran. They're trying to go after lots of different targets at once. We can also expect air attacks from Israel and the United States to only increase in the coming days. Today, they've achieved aerial superiority that will allow them to fly in greater numbers to more places in the coming days. Additionally, Israel, in statements to Barak Ravid, an Israeli journalist for Axios, said today that during the 12-day war, Israel had 4 aerial refueling tankers at their disposal. Today, with American support, they have 50. Okay, and that just is a extension for Israeli capabilities, and that doesn't even take into account the American capabilities in the region. As per Gulf pressure, so this, like I said, is Iran's doomsday scenario. When the leadership is killed, forces in the field have pre-programmed instructions, and the reality is they're probably not getting a lot of direction from senior leadership, maybe even upwards until this afternoon or evening. Actually, Iran's foreign minister even made statements about the targeting of Oman today, that it was a mistake, and soldiers in the field are operating independently. So that sort of explains their capacity to sustain this even while the leadership was decapitated and at least temporarily shot. Their goal with this plan of attacking the Gulf, and even as far as Cyprus, is to get countries to pass a threshold and put pressure on the U.S. and Israel to stop. So far, that doesn't seem to be happening. In fact, there are very intentional leaks coming out of Saudi Arabia that the Saudi Air Force has a green light to strike Iran, and other leaks indicating that at least their airspace is open to America at this point. That is likely meant as a warning to Iran, not further attacks against Saudi Arabia. So the pressure is on, but I don't believe right now it's working as Iran wishes.
Thank you. Thank you for distinguishing between minimum and maximum objectives as things stand now. Mr. Fashandi, what is your take on this particular subject? There's one particular school of thought which has been proposed, and what Mr. Charnov is saying is not necessarily, is actually perfectly in line with that theory, I imagine. So Israel and Iran are taking measures. They are debilitating Islamic Republic of Iran's military prowess, depriving them of pursuing nuclear ambitions, destroying their ballistic infrastructure, destroying their naval forces, creating fortuitous grounds for Iranian people to actually oust the current system. But that last element will require action from the people on the ground, and that means that leads to the question where their loyalties lie, of course. And you believe that 10% of the population there in Iran actually support in a very steadfast fashion the government system there, and the rest loyalties, of course, differ in one way or another. Do you agree with the evaluation provided by Mr. Charnov, and which one do you think will be attained in the foreseeable future? And also, specifically, because we talk about, at Iranian-Israeli perspective, but we also need to understand the resilience of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which has been in existence since 1979, and definitely there are some elements of strength associated with it, which have made it survive all of these turbulent decades. Your analysis, please. Thank you.
Sure. First, I think about the regime surviving since 1979, being 47 years old. The thing is, there's a famous joke among doctors where one day a doctor tells the other doctor, this patient is not going to die. There's no way. And the other doctor asks why. So the first doctor says, because he's 70 years old and he has never died even once in his life. So that's the fallacy, that because the regime has somehow survived over the past half century, it will be invincible and it will survive forever. That has never happened in history, and I highly doubt if it happened to the Islamic Republic. Now, about the distinguishing between the minimum and maximum objectives, on paper it makes sense. But my prediction is that the minimum objective to, let's say, diminish and severely deplete the offensive power of the regime, be it on naval forces or missiles, and then letting them live and survive. I think on paper it may sound like a plausible option, but in reality, it's not going to work out. The reason is, if you follow the military strategy of the Islamic Republic, especially over the past 2-3 decades, is that it is not focused on conventional warfare. Their focus and specialty is asymmetric warfare, meaning using low-cost drones, low-cost boats, or whatever, and basically destabilizing the region such that it becomes too costly for the regional rivals or even for superpowers like the United States to confront them or escalate. That's their strategy. And because of that strategy, if they get a chance to survive, even with a lot of their offensive power depleted, as long as they're in power, they will recover soon and basically regain some of their asymmetric warfare abilities. And that's something that I think a lot of strategists, both in Israel and in the US, are taking into account. If they don't, basically, the reality, the course of events will teach them that lesson. So that's that. Now, about the part that you asked, if there's time, I can answer the part.
There is time, please.
How the people. The last part of your question, in terms of how the people of Iran would respond if the regime's oppression machine basically starts getting dismantled or starts collapsing. What we know is that we already saw a prelude of that, a taste of that, basically in early January, where millions of Iranians basically poured into the street, especially after the Crown Prince called for street protests. on January 8th, 9th, and 10th. And in response, the regime, at the order of the supreme leader, who's gone now, basically killed over tens of thousands of people, in the order of 100,000 people, just in 3 days. So that tells you something. Sure, that tells you first the brutality of the system, the oppression machine. But on the other hand, it shows you how many millions of people were ready to go to the streets, knowing that there's like a high chance. A lot of them have videos, like they recorded videos before going to the streets and said, like, there's more than 50% chance that I will get killed, but it doesn't matter. I said goodbye to my family and I'm ready to die for Iran. And this was both in the capital city of Tehran and all over the country, all ethnicities. We have videos of these deceased people. Iranians call them Javid Nam, that means their name will last forever, or eternal name, or something like that. And sure, 100,000 of them were killed by the regime, but, well, millions more still exist. So as soon as the oppression machine of the system, of the regime, starts showing signs of weakness, maybe by airstrikes or whatever method, then the regime will have to face millions of angry Iranians, many of whom have lost their family members, their brothers, their cousins, and they're coming for them. They're coming for them, and they are raising the Kavian flag, which is the ancient Sassanid flag. It's equivalent of the Star of David for the Jews or something like that. And when Iranians raise that sign, that flag, the Kavian sign, the ancient mythological like flag at insignia of Iran, it means it's an existential war. You're coming to, their message to the regime is that you're coming to destroy Iran and have occupied Iran for the past 47 years. We are coming back to you and to reclaim our land. Iran is ours, and the occupiers must get out.
Mr. Farshandi, if I may, I would like to ask, I'd like to reflect one particular matter, because the reason why I'm asking this question as a follow-up question, which I don't know whether I will have time to ask a question later. Regarding the personality of the Reza Pahlavi, the son of the former last Shah of Iran, there are different sort of conflicting points of view coming from the West and coming from this part of the world. I don't want to sort of consider all of them. We don't have time for that. Naturally, what is happening in Iran is Iran's internal matter, but Azerbaijan and Iran are very well interconnected countries in terms of their history, in terms of their past. The popular point of view in this country, in Azerbaijan, is that there may be many problems with the Islamic Republic of Iran, innumerable problems with the Islamic Republic of Iran, but Pahlavi Iran was not necessarily nice to Azerbaijani population of Iran, and Azerbaijanis have played a crucial role in Iranian history in terms of consolidation of Iranian statehood, with Iranian Azerbaijan being center of the state, and Azerbaijan has suffered massive deal in terms of their linguistic rights, cultural rights, because Pahlavis from 1925, 1979 were pursuing Persian nationalism, and Iran is bigger than Persia in terms of its ethnic composition. Do you think in the case of somebody connected with Reza Pahlavi, or Reza Pahlavi himself coming back to power, what will be the outcome for Azerbaijanis for their ethnic aspirations? I fully understand that we're talking about Iran as an entity, but Azerbaijanis differ from Persians in terms of certain ethno-linguistic elements, as we understand.
Sure. First, I need to basically disagree with your portrayal of Pahlavi's image among Iranian Azeris. It's not an accurate reflection of reality. In some aspects, it's the opposite of the reality. Azeris, first of all, the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi is 50% Azeri himself. And so was the late Shah of Iran. He was 50% Azeri. His mother was Azeri. And Azeris were basically represented under Pahlavi, was represented especially in the army, high-ranking generals in the army, as well as the civilian governments. Many prime ministers were Azeris. The contention you're talking about was because after Soviet Union occupied Iran in the course of World War II. Some communist parties associated with Stalin, at the order of Stalin, started a separatist movement in Azerbaijan of Iran, which was despised by the Azeri people, and eventually the followers of Stalin were kicked out of Iran, and the royal army basically liberated Azerbaijan. So that's the situation. And if you follow the news, if you follow the videos that came out of Iran back in uprising in January, in Tabriz, there were like videos after videos of calling the crown prince, calling Pahlavi the Shah. And he's basically, Pahlavi has had a great image among Azeris, and still quite popular among Azeris.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Fashandi. It's a very important debate, and I'm very grateful that you addressed this matter. What you say, it's widely acknowledged in this country, very typical Persian account related to the fate of Azerbaijanis in Iran, and this is not accepted in this country, but it's a very important point of view. I'm very glad you made your case, because it's very important that we hear what you say. And this is, because of this account, in many ways, people in this country, in Azerbaijan, and some of the Azerbaijanis that I've spoken to, feel concerned about that return, because this account is not in line with their account. But, you know, accounts differ. We are here to listen to all accounts, and I'm very glad you mentioned. Fuad, what is your reflection on this debate? It's a very, as I said, what's happening in Iran is incredibly sensitive, as long as Azerbaijan is concerned. And for a number of reasons. Bilateral relation between Azerbaijan and Islamic Republic of Iran, due to the fate of Azerbaijanis there, due to the different accounts of what Azerbaijanis actually represent inside Iran. What is your evaluation? We need to be able to hear different accounts, of course, and your account is very interesting as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. Well, I think this is a very interesting discussion that the point came to. I think in terms of Iran, when we're looking at it from this region, right, we're from a neighboring country, I see that a lot of the times that accounts from the West or places that are far off are really kind of detached from reality, right? So with all due respect to my co-guests and their views, I think I'm not sure if there is actually a popular support for the Crown Prince to return to Iran, because when we look at the origins of the revolution, right, I mean, within the name, it's the Revolutionary Guard. So there was actually popular support for the supreme leader to come, and the Shah of Iran was toppled, right? So this isn't a debate of good versus bad. It's a debate of what's going to happen, right? So how much of a popular support there is within Iran for the Crown Prince to return, I think it's probably really minimal. Now, but the Crown Prince is really popular with the diaspora. And I think the reason why it's because the diaspora, this is not just to do with the Iranian diaspora, but we saw it, at least in our case, with the Armenian diaspora as well. They're a bit more detached from the reality on the ground. So the main idea that brings them together is the shared motherland, and the motherland that they see is usually not the one that they have right now, which is the cause for their migration, exodus, refugee status, whatever you might want to call it. So I think when we look at the situation in Iran, I think a lot of the times one aspect that's overlooked is that right now the Iran is the epicenter of Shia Islam. So the effect of the regime in Iran, it transgresses the boundaries of Iran. So we saw uprisings in Pakistan as well. There was like protests going to the U.S. consulate. So these are all Shias that are, supporting the regime. Of course, there have been mass protests recently against the regime, but this doesn't really necessarily mean that there's only 10% support for the regime within Iran, because it really does seem highly unlikely. Yes, the younger population probably wants more freedoms. They want a different kind of lifestyle. But I think the older generations, they've really seen what's happened in the period of Iran with the Shah. I think not even the minorities, but even the clerics and the secular system itself wasn't so friendly to the clerics. So this is a region which has had Shia Islam in its history for hundreds of years. And when we talk about regime change, the crown prince coming and governing over Iran. First of all, he hasn't had any political history. So this person that's never held office. So what kind of legitimacy is he going to have in the Iranian population, for the Iranian population, first of all? Second of all, does the Trump administration, does the US and Israel want regime change, or do they want to decapitate the regime? What's going to happen after that is the big question, right? So regime change is a really big step. It's never a peaceful thing. Revolution always causes bloodshed. Will this outweigh the benefits of what's going to happen is the big question here.
Thank you, Faz. Thank you very much indeed. It's very important when you're discussing and analyzing intricate matters in relation to which there are different conflicting points of view. You need to be able to listen to all accounts. And of course, real truth can be found only by means of their comparative analysis. And that's the reason why I'm very grateful to our guest joining from Washington, D.C., Mr. Farshandi, for providing his account, and also to you for providing your account. And I also would like to thank Lieutenant General Marcos Zeronha, who joined us from Lisbon, Portugal. Our conversation with him was largely about the military component. I'm very, very grateful, of course, to Mr. Elton Charnov, who joined us from Tel Aviv, Israel. And well, thank you to all of you gentlemen for this very interesting discussion. And I'm terribly sorry that some parts of this conversation appeared to be focused on one particular subject, making some other guests feel detached perhaps. But I hope that my concern about it is not something that you felt yourself whilst listening to this entire conversation. I'm very grateful to all of you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, what's happening in and around the Islamic Republic of Iran is of massive consequentiality, not just for Iran itself, not just for the wider Middle East, for Gulf countries, for Israel, for Turkey, for Azerbaijan, but for the entire world as well. We have been following these developments from the very, very beginning, from very inception, from the morning of the 28th of February, providing factual reporting and also, of course, analysis, drawing in commentaries from different parts of the world. You have been watching Context Special, and see you very soon indeed.